Good evening, and thank you for joining this webinar with important industry update. We will hear from a number of agencies, and I thank all our presenters in advance for making themselves available and joining us to provide updates on some important issues to our sector. The 2021 growing season is well underway, and temporary foreign workers are arriving daily to begin the work in the vineyards. We understand there are questions and challenges with COVID-19, testing, quarantines, and government regulations. And I thank you for your patience and compliance to evolving requirements. Our first speaker is Drew Nunn, the Area Director from Service Canada, who is going to provide an update on behalf of the federal government on the current quarantine requirements for temporary foreign workers. We will then get an update from Peter Jekyll, the Manager of Environmental Health at Niagara Region Public Health. This will be followed by a labor update from Ken Forth, President of Farms and Chair of the Labor Issue Coordinating Committee. The final update will be from Aaron Pathier, the Acting Category Manager of New World and Ontario Wines at the LCBO. He's going to present an LCBO Ontario Wine Business Update. To all our speakers, thank you for providing these updates. To Ontario Grape Growers, I thank you to all our members and for their ongoing support of our industry and the Grape Growers of Ontario.
So I'll just quickly go through some of the slides from our presentation that we've been running through with the work employers around quarantine and the requirements for that this coming season. Okay, I will quickly run through housing inspections, the foreign worker quarantine process, as well as the quarantine plan for employers and foreign workers. And then lastly, I'll talk about some post-arrival. So once the workers have arrived, what are the responsibilities for the employers during quarantine? Employers with the Season of the SOP program this year and the agriculture program stream must provide temporary foreign workers with adequate, suitable, and affordable housing as defined by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Employers must provide proof of the off-site or on-farm accommodation, and the inspection must be conducted by an appropriate provincial, territorial, or authorized private inspector with appropriate certifications. Following that, employers are expected to submit a valid housing inspection report. So that was completed hopefully in the last 8 months as part of your LMIA application process. However, there's some flexibility available if the employer can demonstrate that the appropriate authority is unable to conduct an inspection. As you can guess, they have been extremely busy. So if there is an inability to book that, you just need to show that you've demonstrated the ability to try to do that. It is expected that employers who are unable to have accommodations inspected must initiate an inspection as soon as possible and submit that inspection to Service Canada within the duration of the work permit issued under the LMIA for this year. Employers unable to obtain one will have to demonstrate that appropriate authority is unable to conduct an inspection. This proof can be in the form of an email or any other communication by the authority. That email would have to include things that all the relevant sections. So indicate the maximum number of workers permitted per approved accommodation, indicate that the housing has been inspected in the last 8 months if possible, or if there was any outstanding conditions that those have been addressed and how they were addressed. So getting to the workers, when the workers arrive currently, they must present a negative PCR test from the last 72 hours prior to their scheduled departure from their home country. They will then undergo a COVID-19 test on arrival. So that currently happens at Pearson Airport. Workers are then required to quarantine for 14 days upon entering Canada. They must use the ArriveCan app to report within 48 hours of arrival in Canada and do a daily health check-in. They can do that using either the ArriveCan app, they can do it online using a computer, or there's a phone number that they can call and do their check-in. All workers must complete a second test on day 10 of the 14-day quarantine using a kit that's provided on arrival. So when they arrive at Pearson, they're also provided with that kit. They must have a negative result before leaving quarantine on day 14. Any foreign worker showing symptoms, having unsuitable quarantine plans, or who raise other public health concerns on arrival may be directed to a designated quarantine facility where they would have to spend time until they received a negative test. It is advisable that employers support the foreign worker in meeting their ArriveCan reporting requirements during quarantine. So if you have the opportunity, you could provide them with a computer, with internet, or a landline so that they can do their daily check-in. Just one note, while the quarantine period is considered work for program administrative purposes, the quarantine period will not count towards the work duration for SOP work permits. So this being said, the 14-day quarantine period does not count towards the maximum allowed 8-month employment for SOP. So as part of the new process this year, employers will be contacted by Service Canada 2 weeks in advance of the anticipated arrival date of the foreign worker to provide key information regarding the location of quarantine for incoming workers. So they will be contacted by email. A new form will be required to be completed and submitted to Service Canada. It's strongly recommended that this form, once completed, be provided directly to the temporary foreign worker prior to their arrival, as it will support accuracy of information into the ArriveCan app, recognizing that there are challenges with workers not having connectivity, or even if it's an unnamed worker. So we recognize that, but if it's possible, there's some benefits there to supporting that. The quarantine location must allow the foreign worker to avoid all contact with people they did not travel with, access a bedroom separate from people they did not travel with, access to the necessities of life without having to leave quarantine, avoid all contact with vulnerable persons and persons who provide care to those persons, and avoid all contact with a healthcare provider and persons who work or assist in a facility, home, or workplace where vulnerable persons are present. Moving on to my next slide. So here's a snapshot of what the ArriveCan app looks like. Foreign workers coming into Canada must use the ArriveCan to provide mandatory travel information and enhanced quarantine plan information before they board their flight or before arrival at a land border crossing. The ArriveCan is a mobile app, but it is also available online, so it can be accessed from a computer. Foreign workers will need to provide quarantine location information on the app, and employers will need to ensure that foreign workers have this information. Employers are required to provide the following information to each foreign worker prior to arriving to allow them to prepare to come to Canada. So the address of the accommodation where they will quarantine for 14 days, transportation information from the airport to the quarantine location, confirming the foreign worker will go directly from the airport to the quarantine location without any stops for food and/or basic supplies. The prearranged transportation plans must be in compliance with public health requirements, which CanAg Travel is certainly taking care of for us. That's great. TFWs who travel together are social distancing from others through to the final quarantine destination, and the transportation must be private and infection controlled. It also must include the employer's contact information, as well as clarification on the coordination and delivery of food and essential items. Just a side note there, foreign workers are responsible for the cost of food and other essential items, but obviously we need assistance in acquiring those upon arrival. So the foreign workers are required to present their ArriveCan confirmation receipt at Canadian Border Service Agency when they get here. This can be completed by either taking a screenshot, they can email it, or a print of a confirmation page. So if they complete it at home before they leave, they can print it off or take a screenshot of the results and bring that with them. To avoid confusion upon arrival, they facilitate the acceptance of the quarantine plan by CBSA. Incoming foreign workers must have the details of the quarantine location in advance to ensure it can be completed accurately in the ArriveCan app. Foreign workers are required to take a COVID-19 test before leaving the airport, and they will also be provided with your COVID-19 at-home specimen collection kit to use for their test on day 10 of the mandatory quarantine. And just a side note, we have been working with Switch Health, who have determined that if possible, if employers can contact them on day 2 of the quarantine period, that would help them be prepared for the day 10 testing So it sort of lets them set up what wave of work is coming their way. So employers' requirements post-arrival. You must email Service Canada at the email address provided there. That is the email address that comes in the 2-week advance notice as well, to advise when the workers arrive at your work location. Providing the following information: the name of your business, quarantine location of the foreign workers, the date and number of workers that have arrived, and the contact information for workers. Employers must comply with all the laws and policies regarding the employer-employee relationship during the employment period, which begins upon that arrival to Canada and includes the initial mandatory quarantine period. Conditions inspected include, but are not limited to, the following. So if an inspection occurs: wages, employers must pay workers as per the LMI and during quarantine. Working conditions must be consistent with what is outlined in the LMIA. Accommodations must meet the health guidelines. And document retention: employers need to retain key documentation such as timesheets, payroll, contracts, and receipts. And as always, an abuse-free workplace: the employers must develop and maintain an abuse-free workplace policy. Employers are also required to assist workers with arranging access to food, medicine, and basic supplies. If the foreign worker needs the assistance of the employer to access the necessities of life, where the lack of such assistance would result in the worker needing to leave quarantine to obtain food and other basic survival items, the employer must not deny that assistance. Employers cannot ask or allow workers to perform any duties outside the contract, such as building repairs or administrative tasks during the quarantine period. As well, providing equipment and products for workers to maintain a clean and sanitary living accommodations. If you are providing accommodations, they must meet certain requirements. Must ensure the beds are 2 meters apart during the quarantine period and only 1 occupant per bed. Provide cleaning supplies needed to practice good hygiene, including the ability to wash their hands often with soap and warm water, providing that soap, and providing an alcohol-based sanitizer. If soap and water are not available and the hands are not visibly soiled, they can use hand sanitizer. Separate accommodations for those in quarantine, and different cohort arrivals must be provided separate accommodations. Employers are required to pay workers during the quarantine period for a minimum of 30 hours per week at the rate of the specified on the LMIA. If a worker becomes ill during the initial quarantine period, the worker is to be paid by the employer. You must monitor the health of workers who are in quarantine, as well as any employee who becomes sick after the quarantine period. If a worker becomes symptomatic at any time, or if there is a COVID outbreak, contact local public health officials, please, immediately. And after advising local public health, please contact Service Canada at that same email address. New supports are being introduced for the employers of TFWs in the agriculture, agri-food, fish, and seafood sectors to support the facilitation of the Day 10 COVID-19 test. This is where we talked about the Switch Health. So effective last week on March the 19th, there's now a dedicated call center and email channel for employers of TFWs introduced by Switch Health, managing the Day 10 COVID-19 tests across Canada where the services are provided. Switch Health can assist directly with the facilitation of the Day 10 testing for TFWs in a safe and secure manner. A communique will be developed jointly, and it's coming out soon, from Switch Health and PHAC around the to help educate employers and workers, inclusive of Easter hours, because that's going to be an issue, with reference to Switch Health contact info, labeling instructions of the samples, as well as pre-registration reminders and details of the appointment process, which would be inclusive of sort of that 2-day contact that I talked about for the 10-day test scheduling. Just some information here where employers can contact Switch Health directly. Employers will be prompted to provide specific information about their organization so that the Day 10 COVID test can be administered in a manner that helps them out most efficiently. The service is going to be available 8:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays. So just a final, some reminders here on the COVID-19 inspection and sort of a checklist for employers. You must pay workers during the quarantine. You must follow the Quarantine Act and what's happening in your zone according to your public health. Provide appropriate accommodations. They must be clean and sanitized. Provide access to life necessities. And at the end of the day, just help prevent the spread of the virus. This last slide just has contact information for Service Canada, how you can reach out to us. Most of this information is available on canada.ca, or if you require further assistance, you can always call 1-800-O-CANADA as well. So that is it for my presentation. Thanks for your time this evening, and good luck with the growing season.
I don't have a presentation for you, but I can give you an update. Basically, as Niagara Region Public Health, I'm responsible for the inspection of all the housing that is required for the workers. And this normally, in normal years, we just follow the seasonal worker housing guidelines. And this past year, and it's continuing into this year, Dr. Hergy has issued a Section 22 order, which further facilitates the implementation of a number of COVID prevention measures at the farming facilities or farming houses. And what we've done is, I think we've been fairly successful at working with the farmers to come up with creative solutions in terms of how to deal with these more restrictive measures. And that's partly because of the COVID-19 issue, and also the fact that do understand that it's going to be very difficult to get building permits and other things in a short timeline. And I do understand the importance of getting these inspections done and the workers in to do the work. So we've made a number of suggestions, and I think generally the housing situation is generally in very good shape. Another area that we have recently sent out a memo to the farmer or through the growing associations is there has been a memo from our medical officer health. It is not an alteration of the Section 22 order. In addition, it is a recommendation. And what we're recommending is that when workers are in quarantine, whether it be as an outbreak or as a result of the initial 14-day isolation, we're asking that they be put up in motels or hotels. And that we've been finding has reduced exposures because you're not congregating in a bunkhouse situation where if you have a highly communicable disease, it spreads very quickly. So we've asked farmers, and again, it's strictly a recommendation to isolate in farms, or I should say in hotels or motels. The other thing that has been requested is because we've been having a number of situations where we have one ill worker being transported from Pearson, going to one farm, but there's multiple farms on the bus. And as a result, they're deemed to be high-risk contacts. A number of farms go into outbreak mode. And so we're asking, again, as a recommendation that farmers make other arrangements to pick up their individual workers from the farm or from the airport to bring them to their farm. And that will limit the scope of the potential spread here and the potential number of subsequent outbreaks that are declared as well. I'm sure there's questions about the vaccination clinics. Be rest assured that temporary foreign workers and farm workers in general are on a priority list. What we've done is we've had mass immunization clinics through Niagara Health as well as Niagara Public Health. And what we do is once you've hit the threshold, like people 75 and older are able to go online and book an appointment. If we have people that don't show or there's leftover vaccine at the end of the day, we don't want to waste it. So we start making phone calls. And I believe one of the ones we had, we ended up, it was Friday afternoon, we got a call from community services saying they had over 300 spots. And what we did is we were just told, call a number of farms. It was random. And in order to fill the spots that were available, we called the largest farms. So there was no preference over one over the other. We just went out and called. And we were able to, I believe, immunize over 310 workers in that situation. So, and we're continuing, like I said, they are a priority on the list. I have asked about mobile clinics because that has been asked. And the indication is the vaccine is very temperature sensitive, at least the ones we're getting right now. We're getting the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. So they're very temperature sensitive. So in the near future, it's unlikely that we're going to be doing any mobile clinics, and that's not the plan. The preference is that we will set up mass immunization clinics as well for that. So stay tuned. Right now, it's just kind of leftover type of vaccine that we're trying to accommodate and bring the workers in for that. But suffice it to say, we will expand, and we're looking at more the mass immunization clinics rather than the mobile units. So I think that's really it for the updates.
Thanks for having us here today, or having me here today. A gentleman from Service Canada said this is March 26th, and this is what I know today. And I said to Debbie before the meeting, it could all change tomorrow. Some things that have happened in the last little while. Thankfully, the three-day isolation at the Toronto airport, which would have been a huge nightmare, was taken away as long as they went to isolation facilities, be it a farmhouse or a hotel. So far, we've arrived 6,900 workers in Ontario since January the 3rd. I think it was the first people that came here. It's more than last year for a couple of reasons. Last year, we were in delay mode right now. And when we came out of delay mode, Mexico didn't kick into gear for another 2 weeks. So a great deal of the early crop, like asparagus, was lost because the workers were just not available to get their paperwork and that done in Mexico. So we seem to be arriving people almost on time this year, although we've had to do only charters from Mexico and Jamaica in the last month or so. That's supposed to open up on April 30th or end April 30th, and we're supposed to be able to get regular scheduled flights till then. Let's see. People have asked me a lot about the $1,500 per worker. We certainly have asked government to continue that. It stopped on March 31st, but that's their year end, and we have no indication that it's going to stop. But we've requested that actually it be enhanced because the wages amount to over $1,200. Food is way over $300, and the hotel is probably going to be another $1,500. So we've suggested the Fed should go to $3,000. We have no indication of what's going to happen with that. We've been working with Switch Health to try to make it a little simpler. You've all heard or had happen some of the nightmares that have happened of workers being on the phone for 12 or 14 hours and then been dropped, and then the next day the same thing happening. And the stress involved for farmers and workers alike. Workers don't know what the heck's going to happen because they feel like they're in violation of some federal government law and they haven't been able to get on. And farmers are stressed out because there are a few inspectors who come around and threaten them with $1 million fine. And that's not on, but Philip Massé says nobody will be fined, but he doesn't represent PIAC, and that's who they represent. So I don't know where that is right now. Nobody has been fined to my knowledge. I thank the gentleman from the health unit that they are using some vaccines that are left over for farm workers. That's a good sign. 300 is a pretty good start down there, and I hope that continues. There's a lot of rumors around that we'll be doing farm workers soon in all areas, but that has not been announced yet. But our unit in Hamilton, as an example, plan to start soon too. As far as arrivals from most countries, most of it have been Jamaica and Mexico. Trinidad and Tobago say they're going to ship workers here eventually, but they don't know when. The Eastern Caribbean are sent. We have a charter coming on April 9th from EC. I'm kind of jumping all over because there's a lot of different information. A lot of people ask me about new housing regulations. The one that the feds put out was basically just a discussion document. When we pinned them down to ask what experts made up that document, they said there was no experts at all. They were just their opinions, not even opinions, but some people's ideas, and they want us to address them, which we did by December 22nd. But we know that we've been told by the federal government that that won't even come into play this year. There is a housing document, though, been created by several health units, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor, a little bit of ESDC consulting with OMAFRA, Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers and Farms. And we got a really good document there that everybody seems to agree with, but for some reason or other, it has never seen the light of day. And I thought it would have been out a month ago, but we have not seen that yet. And I think that document's one you can all live with. But it, as I said, it has not seen the light of day yet. I think that's about all I have with the temporary worker program. I'll touch on a couple other labor issues that we are working on. As you know, we're constantly attacked by the advocacy groups. What disturbs us a little bit is we've been told that the advocacy groups are somewhat funded by the federal government. That's a bit disturbing. However, we're also in court with those same people. And the Labor Issues Coordinating Committee, which most of you have heard of, we've been in court with the advocacy groups and the UFCW for 30 years. And we will probably be in there till the day we all die. But they're constantly attacking the Agriculture Employee Protection Act, which is a piece of legislation, labor legislation housed within OMAFRA that guarantees farm workers their rights. And the United Food and Commercial Workers Union continue to try to knock down that rule or that piece of legislation, so there aren't any specific rights for agriculture workers. It's bizarre to me. You will hear more revved up in the press about this and about the advocacy group sometime towards the end of May, because we're in court for the first time on June 14th, and they tend to think they can influence the justices in court by a lot of public outcry. It hasn't worked since. For the record, we've been in court with them for 30 years and never lost. So I think that's about all there is right now. I had some stuff here I was going to talk about, but Drew said that as far as the foreign worker quarantine and all that was concerned. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers and Farms. I mean, every day. If some of you folks know who Sue Williams is, she's the general manager of the Farms organization. And last year I demanded she take Christmas Day off. That's about it. So it's been a struggle without a doubt. I just hope things settle down and the rules are the rules, and instead of the rules changing on a daily basis. So, but we're in there to support all the farmers the best we can and trying to put reason and common sense to any decisions. So, Tejas, thank you, and Debbie, thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Ken, for all your support, and I can only imagine the hard work you guys are putting in the long hours. So on behalf of our members, thank you very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Aaron Pathe, and I'm here on behalf of the LCBO to give a LCBO Ontario Wines business update. So a few things that we'll go through today will be sales trends post-COVID-19. We'll also look at the changing customer behavior and some local support updates that we have implemented here at the LCBO. So let's jump right into it. So since at the start of the pandemic, wine sales have been growing. When we look at market share across the 3 different buying areas of Ontario, New World, and European, we saw the European portfolio growing 75 basis points, gaining share from New World, which was down 65 basis points. Post-COVID-19, the wine market in Ontario was spun on its head, with Ontario gaining 145 basis points, gaining share from the European buyer, down 153 basis points. When it comes to sales, pre-COVID-19, the European buyer was the only buyer with positive growth. New World Wines was down 2.7%, Ontario Wines was down 1.3%, and European was up 1.3%. Since the pandemic started, all buyers have seen positive growth, with New World up 6%, European wines up 1%, and Ontario wines up 11%. However, even with strong wine sales during the pandemic, the spirits category continues to gain share. Since the start of COVID-19, spirits is gaining increased share from all of their business units, up 247 basis points year to date. Wines has lost 58 basis points, while beers and vintages, the higher end portion of our business has lost 173 and 16 basis points respectively. Probably to no one's surprise is the growth we've seen in e-commerce and grocery. Post-COVID-19, grocery and e-commerce channels are gaining increased share from the in-store channel. And this is not surprising as customers are seeking one-stop shopping when out in stores, and more customers are choosing to buy online to limit exposure. To put this into perspective, pre-COVID-19 sales in store were up 1.5%, grocery was up 26%, and e-commerce was up 16%. Since the start of the pandemic, we've now seen in-store sales continue to grow at 6.5%, grocery up 67%, and e-commerce up a whopping 251%. So one significant trend when the pandemic first started that people didn't really anticipate was a gravitation towards large format wines. Both 3-liter and 4-liter are growing 34% and 29% respectively. And this trend has continued to approach as the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic. And there's very little signs of this trend slowing down. In the past 2 periods, we've seen 35% growth over last year for bag-in-box formats. So I am happy to say that Ontario Wines is growing when compared to last year. If we look at Ontario Wines sales since the start of the pandemic, we can see Ontario is faring well at plus 10% compared to last year. If we break this down by channel, LCBO Wines or LCBO Retail is up 7%, while LCBO Vintages has struggled since the start of the pandemic. This is mostly due to the struggle of ice wine, and we'll dig into this a little bit more in the coming slides. Grocery sales have increased 91% as customers continue to seek one-stop shopping to fit their needs. And the great news is VQA is growing double digits, and VQA wines are up 13%. While I do understand that we're seeing a lot of growth weighted towards grocery, we are seeing some improvements over the past 6 months for VQA wine sales in LCBO stores. In LCBO stores and in our e-commerce channel, we've seen VQA sales in this channel performing better than last year since August. In the first half of the pandemic, we were barely hurdling our numbers from last year, but it's great to see that since period 6, we've had this fantastic momentum of customers gravitating towards local. So we hope that going into our new fiscal year, this momentum will continue in the spring and summer. So generally speaking, still wines are driving the growth in VQA, and VQA Red is up 17%. And when you look across all the sales channels, you'll see subsets such as Shiraz, all subsets growing except for Shiraz. Cabernet Merlot has seen the strongest growth at plus 23% compared to last year, while Cabernet Franc, Bac Noir, and Pinot Noir all showing double-digit growth compared to the previous year. When we look at VQA White has seen growth of 6% since the start of the pandemic, and this is mostly through the grocery channel. In whites, Pinot Grigio is up 22%, and Sauvignon Blanc is up 7% year to date. White subsets that are trending down since the start of the pandemic include, more stylistically, a late harvest Riesling and also Vidal. Rosé is on fire for all categories, and Ontario is grouped right in there. Rosé leads all growth categories for VQA, up 44% compared to last year. We had strong sales in the Rosé program, which is our summer seasonal program, and a strong programming on continuous listings, which all contributed to positive growth. Sparkling has seen in recent periods huge gains for specifically for VQA Sparkling. In midsummer, Sparkling was down 15% compared to the previous year, but we've introduced five new wines, and we had strong programming on these wines that have turned this category around. And year-to-date trends are now showing VQA Sparkling up 34%. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the subsets. As I mentioned, most of the growth, both varietals are growing, and 20 of the 28 VQA subsets are showing growth. So here are the top 4 areas in the past 6 months. VQA Pinot Grigio is up 22%, or 3.1 million during the pandemic, while Cabernet Merlot leads the growth for the red varietals, up 23%, or 3.9 million. As shown in the previous slide, VQA Rosé is growing at 44%. And lastly, Bac Noir is up 20% compared to last year. And this is primarily driven off new wines entering the market and strong programming on existing category leaders. So if we dig into price bands and we look at VQA Ontario wines within the LCBO wines portion of our portfolio, we can find that $13 to $15 is showing the strongest growth, up 13% or 8.7 million compared to last year. And we're seeing customers premiumize as well, which is great for us, in the $15 to $17.95 price point, which is up 17% or up 6.4 million. For LCBO wines, the only declining price bands that we are seeing is above $50. So let's move on to vintages. And as we start to look into vintages, we are seeing growth in VQA Red, White, Rosé, and across all channels. In the first half of the pandemic, our vintages essentials were leading the business, but in recent releases, we've seen increased sell-through on our frontline release products. VQA Red growth is driven by primarily blends, Baco Noir, and Pinot Noir, and VQA White is seeing growth in Riesling and Chardonnay, while other sets such as Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris and Gewürztraminer are seeing declines. Some recent additions to our Rosé Essentials program and strong programming through the summer months has helped our Essentials Rosé business achieve double-digit growth. So within vintages, leading VQA growth varietals include VQA Rosé, of course, which is can be a lot of different varietals contributing to that 20% growth. Red blends, which is up 19% or almost 500,000. Chardonnay, which is up 12%, up 362,000. And Gamay Noir, which is a nice surprise for us, up 25% or 165K compared to last year. So for price bands for Ontario vintages, we're seeing most of our growth concentrated in the $18 to $20 price point, which really is our entry level into vintages. That's up 18% and just shy of $1 million. And we're also seeing growth at $20 to $25, plus 11% or $540,000. Where we are seeing areas of decline is really the premium portion of our business, which is at $30 to $50 and 50 plus. A lot of this is driven by ice wines declines, and we'll get into this in the coming slides. So despite strong sales in table wines, ice wine is a growing area of concern since the start of the pandemic. With the onset of the pandemic, we quickly saw losses in this very important category. And ice wine is quintessentially Ontario. It's often given as a gift or purchased by tourists. But since we have social distancing and travel restrictions and a reduction in luxury spending, this category has been hit hard. Ice wine sales represent 54% of the sales losses that we're seeing within our vintages portfolio. But if we actually remove ice wine out of the essentials portfolio, you'll see that the still wine portion of this category is actually growing 4% compared to last year. So just illustrating the impact of the ice wine decline. So just a few quick slides on responding to the changing customer behavior post-pandemic. And the first is about customers seeking familiar, value-oriented brands. And the ways we're accessing retail is considered to be non-traditional, although they are very much traditional right now. So what we're seeing is an increased focus on value products and familiar brands, as I mentioned before. Customers are seeking an enhanced digital experience for inspiration, where list making is really on top of mind for customers as before they head out the stores and shop. We use communications and displays to make it easy for customers to decide to try something new with less risk, as customers we found in the beginning were just really buying tried and true products. And of course, within our retail environment, we continue with our retail safety measures that are in place. Right now, we are looking to expand our shopping options, so increase stores that have same-day pickup, curbside pickup, and home delivery. For Ontario wines, it really is responding to customer changes. And a part of that, as I mentioned before, is the large format wines. We also collaborated with a lot of suppliers that we could consider to be good partners and worked with them on a lot of projects during the pandemic for fundraising and other charity as well. Within wines, we are seeing a trend towards better for you. This is predominantly led by the ready to drink category, but we are having brands that are focusing on lower sugar and lower alcohol. And as I mentioned before, rosé and sparkling are both growing. And when you put those two together, like sparkling rosé, that's very much on trend, and we continue to invest in those areas. And of course, we continue to support our local wineries. As many of you know, we have our Period 7 feature for Ontario, and we're excited to, as we're working on this right now, to build out the Period 7 feature, and we're looking forward to bringing that to life in fall. Our Period 7 feature last year was a great success, and it really did resonate with customers with our Pay It Forward campaign, and we look to build on that for this upcoming fall feature. So since the start of the pandemic, we understand that small businesses need our support. And because of this need, the LCBO created a new program specifically focused at small VQA wineries. So introducing a new program that, as I just mentioned, is focused specifically on small VQA wineries. And we look to continue to, we're always looking ways to support the smallest wineries out there. And this program will actually be starting in the beginning of Period 1, which is April. And it's going to be over 2 turns. One through spring and summer, which is Periods 1 to Period 6, which basically goes to September. And Period 2, which is fall and winter, which is Period 7 to Period 12, which brings us into March of next year. We're looking to showcase 9 new SKUs each turn, with a minimum case required of 50 cases. In most instances, we're purchasing higher than that. The price points that we're really aiming for are $12 to $20. And the eligibility is for small wineries with annual VQA sales of 100,000 or less. So we're really excited to see how customers react to this. It's in 50 stores right now, and it's going to be launching, as I mentioned, in the coming weeks. So we're really excited to see how this comes to life. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for this update, and obviously some positive news, and thanks for the support for the local industry.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you all speakers who attended to this evening and provided these important update for our grape growers for the 2021 growing season. And this past year has been like no other year we've ever seen, and I think in anyone's lifetime. And while we would normally provide all these updates during the AGM, we thought it would be easier to provide these updates so you could revisit this webinar as our members over the course of the evening, and as well as come back to this. It will be posted on our website. So we're going to end up the evening and just by saying thank you again to all our speakers. And just remember to keep watching for our newsletters and our chair's updates. And because these are important messages that we bring from all of our partners that you've heard from today. And just to remember to visit our website. And thank you again for participating in this evening's webinar.